Can we take a step back to sleep for a
Sure,
little bit?
yeah.
And so people should definitely look through your podcast. The first 5 episodes were on sleep.
Yeah.
Or no, I guess the first opening episode wasn't.
First one was sort of how the brain works generally. It's to give people some background. And then we did 4 episodes on sleep, including some stuff about food, temperature, exercise, jet lag, shift work for the jet lag folks and shift workers.
Yeah, it's like a master class on sleep. And then you're going on to a next topic in the next few episodes, which is incredible. We'll neuroplasticity, we'll talk about it. But on sleep, one of the cool things about the human mind when it sleeps is dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think we understand about the contents of dreams? Like, what do dreams mean? All the stuff we see when we dream. Is there something that we understand about the contents of dreams?
Some of it is very concrete. So Matt Wilson, who MIT guy, showed in rodents, and it's been shown in non-human primates, and now it's been shown in humans, that there is replay of spatial information during sleep. So initially what Matt showed was that as these little rodents navigate through a maze, there are these cells in the hippocampus called place cells that fire when the animal encounters a turn or a corridor. And that exact same sequence is replayed during sleep. And it turns out this is true in London taxi cab drivers. Before phones and GPS were what they are today, the London taxi cab drivers were famous for knowing the routes through the city through these mental maps. And there have been analysis of their place cell firing during sleep and during wakefulness. And so we are essentially taking spatial information about the location of things and replaying it during sleep. However, it's not replayed so that you remember it all. It's replayed so that if there's a reason to remember it, the links to the emotional system, to the components of the limbic system and hypothalamus that are relevant, like you got into a car crash at a particular location, or you lost a bunch of money because you were a cab driver, Uber driver, we'd say nowadays, and you were stuck at one particular avenue all day and frustrated, and you're getting yelled at by your spouse. That information gets encoded so that you never forget that at that particular time of day and that particular time of year, and this thing happened. So context starts getting linked to experience. So there's spatial information that's absolutely replayed during sleep. And we experience this sometimes as dreams. The dreams that happen early in the night when slow wave sleep or non-REM sleep dominates tends to be sleep of very kind of general themes and kind of location. It can feel a little bit eerie and kind of strange. Not so incidentally, the early phase of the night is when growth hormone is released. In the 80s and 90s, there was a drug that was very popular. It's very illegal now, called GHB. You could actually buy it at GNC or a store then. I never took it, but it was a popular party drug, and some famous celebrities died while on GHB. They were also on a bunch of other things, so it's not clear what killed them. But GHB was very big in certain communities because it promoted a massive release of growth hormone and gave people these very hypnotic states. So people go to clubs and they were in these very hypnotic states. It was part of a whole culture. Mm-hmm. That's early night. And those dreams tend to not have a lot of emotional content or load. That phase of dreaming is associated with the occasional jolting yourself out of sleep because it's somewhat lighter sleep. The dreams that occur during REM, during rapid eye movement sleep, and that dominate towards morning are very different. They tend to have very little epinephrine is available in the brain at that time. Epinephrine, again, being this molecule of stress, fear, and excitement. You are paralyzed during these REM dreams. You cannot move. There's intense emotion at the level of what you're feeling, and there's so-called theory of mind. Theory of mind is an idea that was put forward by Simon Baron-Cohen, Sacha Baron Cohen's cousin. I think on the podcast, I mistakenly said that he was at Oxford. It's like the cardinal sin. He's at Cambridge. Forgive me. I'm not British. But so the dreams in REM are heavily emotionally laden. And it's very clear that those dreams and REM sleep, if you deprive yourself of them for too long, you become irritable and you start linking generally negative emotions to almost everything. The dreams that occur in REM sleep are when we divorce emotion from our prior experiences. And it's when we extract general rules and themes. MIT seems to come up a lot today, but it's highly relevant. Susumu Tonegawa, Nobel Prize for immunoglobulin, but obviously fantastic neuroscientist as well, has shown that the replay of neurons in the hippocampus and elsewhere in the brain is kind of an approximation of the previous episode, and a lot of fear unlearning, of uncoupling emotion from hard or traumatic events that happened previously, occurs in REM sleep. So you don't want to deprive yourself of REM sleep for too long. And those dreams tend to be very intense. Now, epinephrine is low so that you can't suddenly act out your dreams. But what's interesting is sometimes people will wake up suddenly while in a REM dream, and their heart will be beating really, really fast. That's a surge of epinephrine that occurs as you exit REM sleep.
Wow.
So you were having this intense emotional experience without the fear. You were essentially going through therapy in your sleep, self-induced therapy. It's like trauma therapy, where you try and divorce the emotion from the experience. And then you wake up. And some people also have the other component of REM, which is atonia, which is paralysis. Pot smokers experience this a lot more than non-pot smokers. There's an invasion of paralysis into the waking state. I'm not a pot smoker, but I have experienced this. And when you wake up and you're paralyzed for a second, it's terrifying. But then you jolt yourself alert. So the REM sleep is important for kind of the self-induced therapy and forgetting the bad stuff. It's good for uncoupling the emotions from bad experiences. And just there are two therapies: eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a eye movement thing that shuts down the amygdala during therapy, not during sleep, and ketamine, which is a dissociative analgesic. It's actually very similar to PCP. And ketamine is now being used as a trauma therapy when someone comes into the ER, for instance, and they were in a terrible car accident. I mean, these are horrible things to describe, but they saw a relative impaled on the steering column or something, and they will give this drug to try and shut off the emotion system, so that, because they're not going to forget. Let's be honest. You don't forget the bad stuff, but it is possible to uncouple the bad events from the emotional system. And there's all sorts of ethical issues about whether or not that's good or bad to do. But the PTSD is a failure to uncouple the emotion from these intense experiences.
So the goal of this kind of therapy is, in the uncoupling, for that to be permanent.
Yeah.
To separate.
Yeah. So they can recount the event and they can describe it without it triggering the same somatic experience of terror and dread, because those feelings can be debilitating, obviously.
And you're saying physiologically in REM sleep, a similar process is happening.
That's right. Thematically, REM sleep is about experiencing or replaying intense emotions without experience the somatic, the physical component of the emotion, either the acting out or the accelerated heart rate and agitation. Likewise with things like ketamine therapies. That's the idea, is you're uncoupling the physical sensation from the mental events.
What is REM sleep and why is it so special? Maybe we can comment on that. Rapid eye movement sleep.
Yeah, discovered in the 50s at the University of Chicago. It's intense brain activity, high levels of metabolic activity, dreams in which people report a lot of the theory of mind. We were talking about Simon Baron-Cohen. Theory of mind was actually something that he developed for the diagnosis of autism. If you take most kids of age 5, 6, 7, you put them in front of a TV screen in a laboratory and you have them watch a video where a kid is playing with a ball or a doll, and then the kid puts it into a drawer, shuts the drawer and walks away, and another kid comes in and you ask the child who's observing this little movie, you say, what does this second child think? And a typical kid would say, they want to play and they don't know where the ball or doll is, or they're upset or they're sad, they want the doll. Autistic children tend to say, the doll's in the drawer. Mm-hmm. The toy's in the drawer. They tend to fixate. They can't get in on the event. They can't get into the mind of they don't have a theory of mind. Dreams in REM have a heavy theory of mind component. People are after me, trying to get me. You can assign motive to other people. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid, but it's because there's an expectation. That doesn't tend to happen in slow wave sleep dreams. Now, all this, of course, is by waking people up and asking them what they were dreaming about, which from a standpoint of a AI guy or a machine learning guy or a neuroscientist, kind of like, but it's the best we've got. Yes. But brain imaging in waking states while people view a movie, and then brain imaging while people are sleeping, supports the idea that that's basically what's going on. So REM sleep is amazing, and you're not going to get much of it during your bout with
So
Goggins, but you will afterward.
why? So to comment, why won't I? So is it not possible to get into it real quick?
Only if you're very, very sleep deprived. But because you're going to be at high muscular output, that's going to bias you towards more slow wave sleep overall. And your body and brain are smart. They will know that your main goal is to recover so you can keep going, so you can keep firing neuromuscular contractions and you can keep running so that you can, I mean, it's amazing to think like, why do we ever stop? Like, unlike weight training where I can't do a 500-pound deadlift. I just can't. I could train for it, but I certainly can't do a 600-pound deadlift. I can't do that. What causes us to stop an endurance event is usually not a physical barrier. It's almost always a purely mental barrier. And that's a very interesting problem. I mean, neuroscientists don't tend to think about those sorts of problems because it sounds so non-neuroscientific, but that's fundamentally related to the question of, you know, what is pursuit? What is the desire to push and to carry on?
Is there a neuroscientific answer for that question, you think?
I think the closest thing is this paper from Genelia Farms, the Howard Hughes campus, showing that if you put animals into a simulated environment where you can measure their effort, the forces on while they're running, and you can look at and you can control the visual environment, and you can create a scenario where the animal thinks that its output is futile. It thinks it knows it's running and it's actually running, but you change the frequency of the stripes going by in their visual world such that they think they're not getting anywhere, and eventually they quit. And the thing that determines whether or not they quit is a threshold level of epinephrine in the brainstem. If you drop that level back down, or you give the animals dopamine, essentially, they keep going. If you take dopamine down, they're like, this isn't worth it. It's helplessness. This isn't worth my time and energy.
Well, this is where the difference between humans and non-human animals is interesting, because it does feel like humans have an extra level of cognitive ability that might be relevant here.
Well, you can pull from different time references. So if you're in that moment, you're going to need a kit of things to pull from. So you can think this is in honor of someone else that passed away. And you will find a gas reserve that's amazing, right? Now, whether or not mice are like, I remember my brother back in the other cage when I was a little mouse, you know, we don't know. But it's very likely that they don't do that, that they're so present, they're in the experience of there and then and now, that they aren't able to extract from the past, and they're not able to project into the future, like how great it's going to feel when I get to the end of this really lame VR corridor. I don't think they think about that.
And think about, like, if I quit now, how will that have, what kind of effect will it have on the rest of my life in the future difficult times? Like, if you allow yourself to quit in this particular moment, you'll become a quitter more and more in life. And then you're going to not get the other nice, the opposite sex mammals.
That's pretty severe. You went there.
I don't know.
You took it the whole way to evolution and back again. I mean, but that's really it. I mean, our ability to time reference in the past, present, or future. I do believe that we can be in the present and the past, or the present and the future, or only in the present, or only in the future, or only in the past. But I don't think that we can really think about past, present, and future all at once. And this has a similarity to covert attention. Like, we can split our visual attention into two things. We really can duo task, even though we can't multitask so well, or we can bring those two spotlights of attention to the same location. But it's very hard to split our attention in really well into three domains, into three domains. I think that that's very, very challenging. And our time referencing scheme tends to be just one or two time references.
So Lisa Feldman Barrett, I'm not sure if you've done work together, but at least you're...
I found out about her because of you and your podcast with her. And then I brought her onto Instagram to do an Instagram live about emotion. And it was fascinating. And she's a very spirited and very, very smart woman, and
fearless and brilliant. So I love her. She's amazing. She's not a scholar of hallucinogens or dreams, but she had this intuition that there may be a connection between the kind of dissociation that happens in dreaming and that happens in like psychedelics.